Boy, June was a busy month. We played 50 games exactly, and almost all of them were new.
Which is probably why it took us longer than usual to do our June roundup, because trying to rank a top 10 out of 50 played games is a really difficult task, especially because we focus so much on the experience of the play, which means that even the ones we were playing for the second time or even the third time or the fourth time still had a valid ranking against the other games.
And so if anyone knows how I play, I'm always looking for like a loophole, a workaround, a way to break the rules. And so instead of having to pick like the top games we played this month, there are a lot of games surrounding us right now at this table that you're about to see.
There's definitely more than 10 here, but what we're going to do for you here is we're going to talk about our top 10 games. Some of those overlap, some of them don't, and we're going to talk about 3 honorable mentions. So I think we have roughly 18 games in the end. It's our top 10.
Madeline's top 10 and my top 10, and there's a bit of overlap here, so we have 16 games total.
But hopefully that will give you a long enough list that you can play several of them over the course of July and let us know how it went.
Let's get into a couple of honorable mentions. These are ones that were just at the edge of our list that we both had a lot of overlap on that we wanted to just touch on quickly before we dive into our regular list.
For each individual game, we're going to do a vibe check. So imagine you're standing next to us in a board game store. We're going to roughly introduce the game to you so that you'd understand what the vibe is. And then we're going to do an experience check. So we're going to talk about what it is that the experience brought to the table that made it make the top 10 list among 50 games this month.
So I'm going to kick it off with a game we played at Manchester Board Game Festival. Courtesy of Levi, we played Container. Now this is a circular economy game where you're kind of forced to work with and hold up, I guess, your competitors because you can't buy from yourself and you need to get resources somehow. And this was a very fun game to play. So you are running a shipping company where you are producing resources, moving them around the board, and then ultimately trying to sell those into the central storage, and you're scoring based on that at the end.
But you're also trying to buy from other people because where the end game scoring is what you have on Container Island. So you're producing things, then you're selling those to another person who's selling them to another person who's bringing them to auction where you potentially might bid on them again.
So you're trying to undercut your competitors, but you're also the more you undercut them, the less you're going to score. And so you're trying to find a balance and constantly be updating your prices. It sounds like boring work, but it's one of those games where work becomes super fun when it's competitive.
Yeah.
I found this game so frustrating to learn, to be honest, because it's the kind of game where it clicked for us, or for me at least, too late in the game. This was a 2-3 hour playtime at a 5-player count. It wasn't until an hour and a half in, 2 hours in, that I was like, oh my god, I get it now. I know what I should have been doing at the start. And by that point, I'd already made so many wrong decisions. But I'm so looking forward to playing this again.
If I were learning Container for the first time again and I wanted to have a better experience, what I would do is, because it's kind of a volley, I would have everyone play 1 or 2 rounds, and then once we got the rhythm, I would start the game again.
There are a few games we played this month where it's been oh, I understand the rules now, but I don't understand why I would do something. And so there was a lot of that in Container where it's I understand what I can do, but I don't know what I should be doing or why I should be motivated for anything. So that was Container. I found it to be quite satisfying because of how creative it was with player engagement.
Plus the freaking components.
Oh yeah,
they're nice. I would not spring personally for the metal version of that game, but I have touched the metal components.
Yeah.
And
a lot of fun.
Yeah, I touched the butt. It's really hard to go back once you touch the butt. So yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah, if you love components, if you love circular economies, and if you love really interesting player interaction, you're gonna like Container. So the next one on our honorable mentions, you will not be surprised if you've seen our other content, is Deep Regrets. So this game we did a full review on, so we're not gonna keep it really lean, and I do mean lean. We try to be short form, guys. I swear to God, we try.
This channel exists because we fail at trying to be short form all the time.
But I don't know. I like that about us. It really is that deep, and I would like to speak about things forever. Deep Regrets is a fishing game, so we have since learned that it is loosely based on dredge and has a mechanic like Macbeth, like fair is foul and foul is fair. So you're fishing in the sea. As you go deeper and deeper into the sea, the ratio of foul to fair fish changes. You go to port and you sell those fish to be able to get supplies and rods and reels to make your fishing endeavors even better and stronger, and then you mount those fish in order to have point multipliers. So we phrased it as, I think actually in the video, the line that I'll pull out that is really succinct is, this is as close as you can get to a RPG without actually crossing into RPG territory. And we both really enjoyed playing this game. The reason why it didn't make it on the top 10 for me, and I'll be curious to hear about why it didn't for you, why this didn't make it onto the top 10 for me, was because at 2 players, it just didn't quite meet my expectations in terms of balance play. Since posting that video, though, we've heard from a couple of people that they have some house rules.
Yeah.
I will tag who said this, and I'm so sorry I can't remember off the top of my head. But wonderful couple mentioned that the way they alter is by each person starting with a rod, reel, and a supply.
Like they draft them.
And I think that that's a really great way of potentially compensating.
It's funny because I saw at least 2 or 3 other comments talking about house rules they have. Another one was like when you go back to port, there's like an extra action you can take that they added. And I was like, it was surprising to me. I've never heard anyone house rule like board games.
Yeah.
And so I found that to be super interesting.
Yeah.
This would be definitely higher on our list if we had a play at a higher play count and it matched the experience that we were expecting.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up on a top 10 in a future month once we get a chance to bring this to table with a 3 or 4 player count.
Yeah, so that's Deep Regrets. It's no stranger to the channel. We have a full video on this, so go check that out if you want more opinions from us.
So our final honorable mention is
12 Rivers. This is another one that we brought to Manchester Board Game Festival.
Yeah. When we pulled out 12 Rivers, we were like, it can be a light thing, like fluff, maybe even just a little gimmicky because of the gameplay we'll talk about in a second. But it's much more strategic, but spatially strategic, which is wonderful.
So let's rewind for a second. One of the mechanics of this game that might look like a bit like a gimmick if you haven't played it yet is this marble track that goes down the mountain, and there are different opportunities to block off the pathway. And so you're essentially trying to collect different combinations of these color gems. And so the higher up you block off, the earlier you get an opportunity to pick from one of those, whereas if you pick at the very end, there's a chance that other people will have plucked the more valuable gems.
Or that nothing makes it down.
Yeah. And so there is a lot more depth and strategy than you would expect from a cute, cozy game like this. And that's what really surprised us. And I think that's why it stands out for us, especially given that it was quite easy to learn in the hall of a convention. And so, this was a solid pick that I'm excited to have on a shelf.
It's not necessarily mean player interaction, but you're definitely purposefully interfering with other people. I think there is a world in which if you were playing with people who were extremely competitive, it could be prone to hate drafting. But largely speaking, I think it rides that line between cozy and competitive, where if you assume everyone's just playing their best game and you're not actively out to attack each other, it's just really fun. And I think that it is gimmicky. I do think that the player board is going to wear down after a certain amount of time because it's partially made out of foam, but it's not gimmick alone. They've done a really great job balancing the strategy with the delight of the board itself.
Yeah, so that's 12 Rivers.
Those are our 3 honorable mentions. So I think it goes to show how good our top 10 was and how exciting the games we're going to talk about are, considering that even our honorable mentions I really, really loved.
Yeah. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go from our number 10 to our number 1 pick. If one of us has ranked a game higher, we're going to pause and we'll catch up with that later.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Madeline's number 10 pick. So what did you pick?
My game is Frosted Blooms. So this game I really regretted not picking up a copy at UKGE this year. And when I heard people talking about it, I was like, please, I love a polyomino game. And we had actually just played Patchwork for the first time this month. And so this, like Patchwork, it actually feels a little similar to Patchwork. Only you're in Patchwork, you are picking these polyominoes, so like the actual Tetris-like pieces, and you're trying to cover a board that's pre-given to you as quickly as possible. Whereas in this game, you are choosing these and you're constructing a freeform grid in front of you. And what you're trying to do each turn is choose one of these while also playing something from your hand that's a scoring criteria that kind of matches the flowers or the terrain so that you can get mid-game points. And you're trying to build into negative space so that you can get barns and farmers and windmills, and you're also racing to objectives. So it's a little bit clunky in terms of some seemingly disconnected mechanics, while at the same time feeling quite cohesive in the theme overall. So there's the turn-based point scoring, the end game scoring, and the racing objectives. So there's kind of different ways that you can play it out. But it was a very calm, puzzly game. I will say that you can get a little bit like min-maxy or over-engineered with what you're choosing, and puzzly spatially, because you kind of have to be like, okay, I got to try that on and see how that fits, or I got to try this on and see how that fits. I think that if you were just having a nice cup of tea and you were playing a slower game, this is a really great fit for that. So I really enjoyed Frosted Blooms. The other thing I will say is that the shiny frost that they put on all of the tiles is really beautiful.
So I have fallen a bit out of favor with tile placement games. I found a lot of the ones we played to be a bit samey. And so the thing that I was most pleasantly surprised by in this is that it felt quite refreshing. And I came in with expectations, but I found it quite satisfying how much agency I had over the tile placement in this this game, and I found it quite fun and stimulating.
So up next is Ollie's number 10, which didn't make it to my list this month, but has made it to my top list several months before. We absolutely love it, and that is
Crown of Ash. Now, you'll be familiar with this because we've spoken about it a few times on the channel, and it was in my pick for the museum, just based on the visuals alone. The main reason this is on my list this month is that we've been playing the prototype for the Monuments expansion, which is it's one of the cleanest, most creative expansions I've seen for a game. There are these cute little helmets that you put on the workers. And so I should probably explain high level how this game plays. This is a worker placement game where at each location you are getting resources to either recruit for your like warriors or recruit like buildings for new abilities. And now that I've played like Old King's Crown, I have realized that like it mechanically it feels quite similar. It feels like a slightly lighter Old King's Crown. And so yeah, I've been really enjoying getting this to the table. Like, how would you describe the mechanical like gameplay?
It's a good question because by all accounts, since this has battling in the lifeblood of the game and area control, it's not a game I'd usually go after, but this game is so easy to learn. The rulebook, I have never been so in love with a rulebook in my life. This rulebook is amazing. Yeah. And the combination of the worker placement battling, even though it is a very confrontational and competitive game, the level of strategy in it makes it feel less like just an arbitrary, like, take that kind of situation. It's, you have to balance between keeping your fighters in your hand so that you can attack versus keeping your fighters in your location so you can defend. There are so many layers to the mechanics to balance things out and make it so that when you're attacked, it's not just a lost cause. Yeah. Like, you can really defend yourself. And so I think it feels more like risk management meets area control, meets strategy, meets resource management. I just love this game so much.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why the Monuments expansion elevated this so much for me is that a lot of expansions that I play just add more content, add a bit more variety, whereas I think that the expansion in this game was so good at just improving the amount of agency that you had. It like elevated the mechanical like experience of the game so that it wasn't just adding more like variety or adding more like breadth. It was adding more depth, which I really, really, really appreciate.
That's a really good summation. It doesn't necessarily only add a couple of extra things to do via quests, which it does. The helmets reinforce actions that the workers are already taking. So it just makes you more like it gets in there,
So I rave a lot about Nard people, but when I hear someone likes Ivy Studios games, especially like the Scales of Fate series, when I hear they like Old King's Crown, like this is a game that I'm very quickly recommending to people. Yes. And I've been successful every time so far.
Yeah.
Like, people I've played with love it.
And it plays beautifully at 2, and also we've played it at 3. The battling element goes up a little bit more when you're playing at 3 players because you can't avoid conflict as much. Yeah. But at 2 players, it is still a fantastic game.
Oh yeah, full agree. Yeah. So that is Crown of Ash. That's my number 10 pick.
My number 9 is already a well-known and beloved game, which is Come Sail Away by Sashi Sashi. So I actually surprised myself looking through the list and this making it on my top 10, because if you asked me from a different angle, I don't know that I'd be like, this is one of my favorite games. However, it has a mechanic in it that I found super experientially satisfying. The way Come Sail Away works is that you have a ship that is identical to other players but can change game to game. And in each of these ships, you are drafting passengers from a card. You're choosing one of your cards, which are different colors, and you have to lay them in the order that they are on the card. And you're trying to get some combos by like putting the right colored player into a passenger room or a guest room, if they're the one that has luggage, and you have to place them adjacent, and if you can't place them somewhere, they end up being disgruntled, and you can sometimes bring them back, and there are some bonuses you can plan in. It was really just a lovely, satisfying, calm evening puzzle. I think like even just looking at my games, I think this month I really enjoyed the experiences of things that had a good crunchy puzzle in them, but were a bit more independent in their play, because I think I was feeling borderline nonverbal this month when we were playing so many games. So this one, I've never played a game that required that level of sequencing in a specific way. And so it was super simple to understand. It was super simple to play, but it was really a satisfying puzzle.
I can't agree that. Like, similar to Frosted Blooms, which we both keep gesturing at off camera, like what I really appreciate about this game is that a lot of these games that are quite simple to understand and simple to get to the table, simple to teach, sometimes lack the like depth of complexity and the challenge that you're trying to like sink your teeth into. And I feel like this came with that. Like I feel like someone who is maybe new to the hobby could enjoy just playing this game through, but if you're really into trying to get the best score possible or really trying to compete against the players at the table, there's a lot more depth here if you're trying to fully optimize for everything, and that's quite satisfying.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this game.
My number 9 is Moon. Now, we've been playing a lot of Moon games this month, and Moon is...
We watched Project Hail Mary this month, or last month actually. We watched Project Hail Mary last month, we played Moon, we played a whole bunch of other space games.
Moon
I feel like
Bloodbath.
yeah, we're on a kick.
No, this is just Moon sans Bloodbath. So, in Moon... This,
for now.
Yeah, so we picked up this game because we were looking for more juicy engine builders, and this did not disappoint. There are some really, really cute components in this, and whilst we've only got it to the table once, I'm excited to get it to the table again, because it's another one of those games where I only started to learn it partway through the game, and like, fortunately, I saved my game here. It was so satisfying. I love the like Wingspan-esque like tableau build that we had in this, although it was like vertical instead of horizontal. And there were some really creative uses of like player interaction where like I could send off my rovers to use Madeline's cards, but then she would get the benefit of having those rovers because she would reap them at the end of her round. And
I think you need to give an overview first.
Yeah.
So the overview of this game is you are building your own station on the moon. And so this is like resource management or criteria to be able to build meets engine building, except the engine is only activated once per round and it goes over the course of, I think, 4 rounds. What's interesting though is that what you're investing in putting down, so there are flags that are, so you have to pay resources and have flags established for different cards. Some of them are free to put down, but some of them have different payment mechanisms. So you're trying to balance like building an engine that's going to activate 4 times maximum, while also not having things that your opponent is going to potentially overuse, while also knowing that if they choose to use it with their rovers, you get those rovers so you can leverage their camp and return in the next round. And there are also these cards that you can invest in that are mid-game, like asymmetric abilities, like little booster abilities, and also end-game scoring criteria. So you're building your engine and doing resource management while also trying to balance how much to invest in the early reaping while making sure you're investing in the right cards later in the game and keeping an eye on what the heck your opponent is doing so that you're not creating redundancy.
yeah, so like, all that to say, I love a good engine builder. I don't think we have enough of them in our collection. They have a series of games in this box format.
Yeah.
And what was the other one that we were super interested
Villagers and Street. So
Street.
they're all by the same artist, and one of our other top 10 games is also by this artist. So Sinister Fish is good in our book this month.
Yeah.
But I've heard mixed things about Villagers and Streets, though that is something that's in Manchester Board Game Festival's library. So that might be something we will report back on next month.
All that to say is that like I think it'd be less annoying to you if they just like stacked on top of each other and they just took up the same slot in our Calyx. So
He's always gunning for a new game.
so that is Moon. That's my number 9 pick. So Madeline's number 8 is actually my number 2. So we're going to skip that and touch on that later and go straight to your number 7 pick.
My number 7 is Ollie's number 16, which is Above and Below Haunted. Red Raven Games, you've probably heard us talk about Red Raven Games. If you are familiar with Red Raven, you will immediately recognize this as a Red Raven game. The other game that we love is Creature Caravan. That's also one of our favorite games.
Creature Caravan's a top game for me.
This has sat on our shelves since I got Creature Caravan. I very quickly after that invested in Above and Below Haunted. I believe I originally heard about this game via Thinker Themer. Absolutely love their content. And this game is adventure, as in a choose your own adventure meets tabletop world. Tiny, light RPG, although you don't have to play it that way if you don't want to. So what is happening over the course of this game is that you have moved to this new village and you are trying to build a tableau in front of you. And there's above and below. There are caves that are being explored, and there's also these buildings that are being built in your tableau. And you're trying to balance between gaining the resources that you need in order to advance on this point track, while also being able to get enough coins so that you can buy buildings that give you some of those resources. And sometimes you might be rolling the dice, literally, in order to send your villagers off instead of building houses or collecting resources or even hiring villagers. You might be using those villagers to go on adventures, which give you a pool of resources that you don't know if they're valuable or not because it's completely relative to your game. on these little quests. So what I loved experientially about this game was that it was controlled risk. So in the adventuring mechanic, which several times during the game, we were both like, yeah, I could do the safe thing, but like, screw it. The point of this is to go adventure. Open the adventure book and read me my quest, sir. And it was really fun to lean into the dynamics that way.
Yeah, like I've been noticing over the past couple of months how big player interaction is as a factor in how much I enjoy a game. And like actually like the player interaction itself is quite low in this game, but experientially we spent a lot of time talking to each other, reading each other our quest logs, helping each other like reset the round, and so like it still felt like I was really playing with you, even though mechanically in the game there wasn't too much involvement between our players mechanically. Like I wasn't like attacking you or taking anything from you. And that was quite fun. I really enjoyed that. And
there is actually, that's a partial lie because there's one mechanic I didn't mention, which is the haunted part.
Oh, yeah.
So there are these ghosts that are progressively haunting your village. And you have to, one option you can do is to deploy a certain kind of worker in order to banish those ghosts. And what's cool is that this would just be a blatantly mean thing to do to another player if it wasn't for an added element that they put in, which is that the ghost that you choose to haunt them with ends up, depending on which type of building you put it on, it reaps rewards and resources for you. So I appreciated that the only player interaction that's really overtly mean has a secondary purpose so that it takes away that sting of like, oh, you're just trying to like hurt me or avoid negative costs for yourself.
And there are some benefits to having ghosts so that you can then do that and do things with them. However, it's an inconvenience, especially depending on where they place it, given that you don't have any control. So I quite like that.
So that's Above and Below Haunted.
So we're getting to the part we're going to start having a lot more overlap. And so my number 8 is also your number 3. And so we're going to skip ahead to my number 7 now, which is Zenith. And so we've already spoken about this a lot on short form because we played this game like 4 times in the span of 3 days.
This game made me very upset the first time we played.
Yeah, so Madeline has a very high win ratio in our games. I track all our data, and the first like 3 times we played this, I won. And then Madeline won a 4th time, and then we took a break, and we played it more times since.
That makes it seem like the reason I didn't like it was because I wasn't winning. This game taught me a lot about how I feel about player interaction or player interference, where it is confrontationally combative and emotional stuff, which again, we did a video on, and I think I even have more learnings. But let's talk about the actual mechanics of Zenith first, because I think it will become really clear to people who are more familiar with board games, especially why a game like this might be hot or cold. Yeah,
so Zenith is kind of lane battle-y, but it's more like you're playing like 5 different tug-of-wars at the same time, whilst you're playing down your recruits, upgrading on different resource tracks, and trying to manage like how much do I want to like slow your opponent down versus like speed up in one area, and so you're trying to make like payoff type decisions quite regularly. At its core, it's really that simple, and which is why I really liked sinking my teeth into it, because the depth really came in the decision making. There wasn't too much complexity in understanding how to play. A lot of it was like, how do I want to prioritize? How do I want to strategize? And that's games where like I kind of thrive a bit more than you initially. And so I felt, honestly, it was quite fun to be winning games.
One of the things I really am realizing that I like as a mechanic is when a resource has dual or even dual or just multi-purpose. So in this, like the recruit cards can be played into a lane, and that affects the tug of war. You can also discard it based on its type, and that plays into your ability to get certain resources or to advance on certain tracks. And so I like when there is a almost like central amount of resources where there are many different ways to use them. And so you're not just managing the resource in a like single circular way, but you're thinking like, how is this resource more valuable to me? Is it more valuable in this way or in that way? And that can change also based on what the other player is doing, where all of a sudden something that you thought was going to be really valuable in one direction now needs to be recouped in another direction.
Yeah, awesome. I don't have too much more to say, to be honest. Experientially, for me, this game was an opportunity for me to play a much more competitive game with you than we usually play without it feeling too mean. And there were still some learning
it felt mean in the beginning.
There were still some learning opportunities there, and we've been exploring more games since Zenith, but it really felt like a gateway to like combative games that are like more compatible with our preferences.
Yeah. This is definitely a game where I think it's hard to feel settled because it's not only high player interference, but it's also just a very active game. There's nothing passive is happening in this game, and so you don't relax into it. Like I did not feel relaxed at any point during that game. Doesn't mean it was a bad thing. It was just different than what we were doing recently.
One thing I will say is that this game is designed to be 1 versus 1, but they do have a mode for 2 versus 2. So there's only supposed to be 2 teams, but they do have rules in place for when you play at 4, where on 2 teams. And we haven't played like that yet, but I am curious. I know Brad and Kate also have played, and I think like Zenith, and so we might pull this out with them next.
Yeah.
So that was Zenith, which is my number 7 pick. So up next we have Madeline's number 6.
Which is Typeset. So this was introduced to us at UKGE by Dan from Board Gamist, who is one of our local stockists. And Typeset is one of the DVC games, and so we have a couple more that we're trying now. We have Inkwell and PAX, which also just came out. And I was a huge fan of Wordle when it first came out, but I typically have a hot and cold relationship with like flip and writes or roll and writes. I like them when they're chill. I tend to like them more digitally, only because I don't like the single-use nature of things. In this game, what you're doing is you have a little individual card. It's really cute. They all have like different fonts.
Yeah.
And you are trying to create different words, and it's like a push your luck word building game because every single round a certain number of consonants, or I think it's 5 consonants, are being flipped over, and you have a list of vowels that you can use, and once you put the letters down, they're locked in. And if you don't complete a word, or you end up going 2 rounds too deep and you go bust, like your whole card goes bust, because there's a certain length you have to get to. So I really liked this game, and I actually find that people we've introduced it to who aren't usually into flip and writes or aren't into word games like and enjoy this game.
Yeah, well, that's me included. Whilst this didn't make my list, I have a lot to say about this game experientially, because I usually have like an active dislike for like literature-y, like word-based games, but I really liked Typeset because it added a bit more like multi-dimensionality to the mechanics, where it wasn't just who knows the most words and can make words with this, like Scrabble, for example.
Yeah.
There was a lot more strategy in like, where am I going to place my letter this round to set up a future potential word? And I think it just played with strategy in a bit more of a creative way than I see most like word-based like games.
I would definitely agree with that. This felt like creative wordplay rather than, it is a little bit Scrabble-like in terms of being creative with the resources you have available. But I think because there's a collective pool, it's also really interesting to see how different people are choosing to like build up their board.
Yeah, but it gives you agency. It gives you options like, okay, I'm going to go for a short and silly word, but that's going to allow me to use like an uncommon letter, which then gives me a point, and I can use that point to unlock a free bonus vowel. And then with that vowel, I can actually make a more complex word. And it's like there's more strategy and depth to the actual game beyond just, I have these letters and I need to make the words that I can with them.
And there's also each round a new game-breaking ability that you can use once, and you actually are incentivized to use them because that unlocks a bonus letter. So it's layered, it's fun, it's easy to understand. I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. It's a good like appetizer game, or a game for people who are not familiar with modern board gaming. So really enjoyed this, was very pleasantly surprised by it, and we'll be pulling it out, especially with the Fan Bam, more often.
Yeah, I agree. That was your number 6 pick, and so we're going to do my number 6 pick next.
Which is a fun game.
Yes, so this is Fort. Fort is awesome. I keep describing this to people as like Fliptoons, but more competitive and combative. I really love how the theme ties into mechanics here, because you are building a deck of your friends, and you start the game with 2 best friends who will never leave your side, and then you're building up your friends, and if you don't play with your friends, if you don't like play them in your turn, they go to your front yard and other players can recruit from them. And these are the kind of details that I'm like, okay, mechanically that's fun, and it ties so well into the theme, and I have so much appreciation for this game, and it's such a small box.
This game didn't quite make it onto my list, only because I find it's still quite clunky. Thematically, everything makes sense if you understand the theme. Like, for example, there's someone who is leading, and then you can follow, and you have to make sure that you're balancing between prioritizing cards that you want to lead with while also following enough that you don't lose some of those friends. So there's a lot of dynamic strategy around how you play out your hand. However, your own turn play, I found, and I appreciated that it was on the main central player board so that you didn't have to go back to the rule book all the time.
Yeah.
But I did have to keep being like, okay, first I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this. And that cognitive strain, I think, makes games a little less enjoyable for me, because it just means that it doesn't feel as smooth, and there's always a part of my brain that is trying to hold the structure of the game, and so it's just cognitive load, to be honest.
I mean, I wouldn't say there was a lot of admin, but there was definitely more admin than you might expect for such a small box game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fort was a big pick for me. This will definitely be staying in our collection. I love this. If anyone tells me like flip tunes, but we want to play more like combatively and see how our relationship survives that, then this is definitely one I'll be bringing out. And we played this with Levi the other day, actually. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Okay, so on to our next pick. So at Madeline's number 5, what do you have to show for us?
Oh yeah, we're in top 5 territory now.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 5, and I'm very surprised that this is my number 5, and we don't have a copy of it. Another one that Dan introduced us to is Colt Express. So Colt Express is a very common gateway game, and what you are doing is you are a bandit that is trying to rob a 3D train. So the board is a 3D train that's in the center of the table.
I feel like I need to underscore what Madeline has just said, even though it's so obvious. This is literally a model of a train where you can put your characters inside of it. Like your characters are moving all around the actual physical train.
Yeah, so the main central mechanic of this game is programming. So there are, each different round, there's a central card that will tell you how the cards are going to play out. So it might be like 1 card, 1 card, 1 card, 1 card, or 1 card, 2 cards, 1 card, or 1 card, you all go through a tunnel, you don't know what's going to happen, 1 card, 1 card, right?
Yeah.
And this scene, you know ahead of time, but you place the cards down, unless you're going through a tunnel, they're face down, but most of the time they're face up, and you place the cards down in order, but but the whole scene plays out in one go. So it would be like you put a card, like let's say it's 1 card, 1 card, 1 card, 1 card. It'd be like each of us go around putting 1 card down. Now each of us go around and place another card down. Yeah. Now each of us go around and place another card down. And then finally the 4th card down. Then the lead player takes the whole deck of cards that you've programmed and flips them over one at a time, and the scene plays out. And the cards are a limited amount of action, so you can like punch each other, you could shoot each other, you can hop up the train, you can move the sheriff to catch whoever's in the car. So there's a certain amount of a lack of predictability, even though you know some of the actions that are going to happen, which make it just the second the programming starts actually unfolding, the whole game is freaking chaos.
And so like during the round where you're like playing cards, there's a little bit of chuckling around the table. It's quite quick usually. And like there's a bit of chuckling because you're like, oh, I saw what you just did, and I'm going to try and like put an action in just after that so I can like knock you into the sheriff's room or whatever. But there's a bit of chuckling, and then the deck comes out and there is just hysterics. It's then like you're just playing back a movie because there's nothing you can do at that point. You're really just replaying events. You can play this game as pure vibes. You can play this game as strategically as you would like. It was a really delightful game. We had such a fun time. Oh, yeah.
And we're really grateful to Dan for showing it to us. We saw him and a whole group of people playing it at AirCon, and they had all said at the time, you have to play this game.
Yeah.
And I think both of us were like, okay. In the way where like that type of game, from just looking at it, I actually thought it was a like social deduction game because I'm not into
I had a
different
vibe, the same outcome in that like I feel like when games often like overcompensate with like grandiose like components, in this case like the big train in the middle.
Like what we thought about 12 Rivers.
Yeah, I'm like, it's probably leaning on that as a crutch, but just like 12 Rivers, it used it so well. Oh, yeah. So
this is one that will probably make it into our personal collection eventually. It's just that in this moment in time, actually, I think, so I'm obviously from the US, and there's a high chance that when I go to the States, I will buy a copy of this game to play with my family there. But this seems like it's a really great tradition game as well.
It's like also the kind of game that I described another game like this the other day, where it's like, it's not really a party game, but it feels like that kind of vibe where like you're getting people to the table to have fun. I think it was Deep Regrets actually, where it's like there is strategy and fun like tabletop mechanics to this, but it's a hoot. Yeah.
All right, on to Ollie's 5.
Yeah, so this is another one I don't have I do have it in front of me. I've been playing this game on Steam, and we've just got the physical like upgrade version of this. So that is Dune Imperium. This is Dune Imperium Uprising though. And so I haven't played this exact version just yet. I've been playing Dune Imperium on Steam. Oh, I'm yet to introduce this game to Madeline, so unfortunately she isn't going to be able to speak too much to this. This is a deck building worker placement game, two of my favorite mechanics in board games. What you're doing on Dune Imperium is you are building up your deck so that you can take actions because your card influences where you can send a worker to that round. And you're trying to balance getting resources to sustain you within the fight, or to gain favor with some of the different factions within the game, or to send your troops to the desert. And so you only have to get 10 points to score at the end of the game. And so it sounds so simple, but there is so much depth to this game and how you can outplay your opponents. There's a little bit of light asymmetry in this game, which makes it a lot of fun and replayable in order as you learn the game in depth. And of all the board games I've ever played, there are so much strategy videos on YouTube, and so I think it's representative of how much depth there is in this game.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to really encapsulate all of the mechanics in this game because a lot of it is understanding the circular economy, similar to how we spoke about Container earlier. But what I've been really liking here is the deck building that I like from games like Slay the Spire, facilitating another mechanic, which is worker placement. Honestly, I love the pairing of the two.
Yeah.
That's the main thing for me.
I will be learning this game, so I will also report back about how I feel about Dune Imperium. That being said, I often don't reach for games like this because of IP.
Yeah.
So I love Dune, actually. However, I find that there's a lot of games out there that rely on IP and don't actually chase that up with strong mechanics. And so I think maybe unfairly, I have a little bit of trepidation usually that keeps me at arm's distance from a lot of IP-based games.
Yeah.
That being said, Battle of Hoth, I've heard wonderful things about.
The Skyrim series, the Elder
A
Scrolls
lot
series.
of the Hobbit There and Back Again,
Yeah.
or Fellowship of the Ring. There's a lot of games where I do think they are beautifully developed and aren't just leveraging the IP. So I'm excited. I'm excited to learn about it, and I'm really grateful for your advocacy.
Yeah, Direwolf have a great reputation. So Direwolf usually adapt games digitally, but they've also made Clank, they've also made Dune Imperium, and
I think they did Everdell, no?
They adapted Everdell digitally.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so honestly, so excited to learn Uprising, but first we're probably going to be learning the base Imperium game with Madeline digitally.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So that's my number 5 pick. So now we're up to your number 4 pick, which is just made it onto my list, but not quite in the top 10.
It sat on our shelf for way too long, and that's Dewan.
Yeah, Dewan, so fun. Why don't you tell us how this plays?
So this is a little bit of an adventuring game, a little bit tableau builder, a little bit worker placement. So there is a central map, and there are different variants that you can play on that central map. But in the central map, you are laying camps down because that's one way that you can get points. But in order to move through the board, you need to pay down these landscape cards, and it needs to match the tile that you're moving from, in between, and moving to. And if you cross over territory that someone has already claimed, you have to pay the card to them. In addition to that, with each camp you're placing down, there are additional actions you take. So you get these story tiles where you're trying to achieve camps or resources of a certain amount in order to then get even more resources. You're also placing permanent resources, so those landscape cards that you can use to travel. You could also slide under your board, I think a maximum of 3 times if I remember correctly. And so there's a lot of strategic planning, and there's light player interaction, which means that if you might have been planning to lay a camp somewhere, you now need to think about, do I want to put my camp there? Can I put that camp there anymore if someone else has done something? Should I be using this landscape card to travel? Should I be using it as a permanent resource? So there's a lot of negotiating. The table presence of this game is stunning. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And the
boards...
it's
one of the ones where I just want to say, the box doesn't do it justice. I think a lot of the games we appreciate the design for, it's the box is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But in this game, whilst the box is nice, it does not do it justice.
And the individual player boards, so they're dual layered and they are also recessed boards, but they're designed so that you don't have to reference the rule book. So each individual camp is put inside of the board where some of them are slanted, and it points basically toward the extra action that you get to do during that turn. And so there's a lot. This is how earlier I was talking about how in Fort the cognitive load feels really high. The cognitive load is built into this game, and so I think that makes for a really beautiful gameplay because it meant that I could use my cognitive load for strategy rather than for remembering the turn play.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Dewan. We've played it once at 2 players. It is fast paced, like for the amount of strategy that is in this game. It's really nice because you can be in and out within 30 minutes, genuinely 30 minutes. But it's a great one to pull out. This is also one that I would introduce to someone who is ready for more complex games and, is trying to get out of the singular nature of tile placement.
Because it's not really... I wouldn't say this is heavyweight. One of the reasons why I like this game is that it subverted my expectations. Seeing like tiles and tile placement, my brain went to like I said with Frosted Blooms earlier, I have expectations around tile placement games now because they borrow a lot from each other. But this game felt so unique. Again, I really enjoyed the player interaction in this game. Yeah. Like it wasn't super negative. You benefit a lot from people interacting with you, but you don't necessarily lose a lot from having to interact with the other person. Yeah. So that was quite nice.
Right, and we love Space Cowboys. They're responsible for Splendor. We just bought First Giant, so there's a bunch of games that have come out of Space Cowboys that we really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
We love a Space Cowboy.
So up next is my number 8 and your number 3, which is...
Kinfire Council. Oh, it's a hefty boy.
Yeah.
We're picking it up. Kinfire Council, I went out one day. I went to our local traveling man, and I decided because Ollie had built us a shiny new website and had been working in his hobbit hole for forever, and nobody ever appreciates the back of house work. And so I bought Kinfire Council because if you've been watching our content for a while, you know that we really enjoy Kinfire Delve.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about getting Kinfire Council. And so I went out and I grabbed it. And I'm really glad I did because it ended up being my number 3 pick of the month.
Which really surprised me because this game, like we were sat down to play, expecting to play for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. This game took a bit longer to learn than we expected, and a bit longer to play than we expected. And so I think we finished playing this at like 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m.
Late.
Yeah, very late. And that usually like drags a little bit, but this game honestly surprised both of us.
I think in this quest of our top 10 games, I was trying to really think about the 10 memorable experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that for Kinfire Council, even though there were a lot of things that I did find more challenging about the game. So for example, it felt like a lot of individual actions that I wasn't really sure why I would be taking them until later rounds when the cohesive strategy started to build up. There was clunkiness, but overall I really enjoyed the game. So how this works is it's basically worker placement meets resource management.
Yeah.
So you are an asymmetric player with abilities, and you have a bunch of grunts essentially, as well as your main worker, and you're trying to gain reputation.
Yeah. So canonically in the Kinfire universe, there was Kinfire Chronicles where there are these like calamities, and then there was Kinfire Delve where you're trying to resolve the problem of like the lighthouse towers, and now in Kinfire Council this is like the last safe refuge, and so a lot of the characters you'll recognize from previous games have come together and are like working together but like competitively to try and like restore a like thriving civilization. And so you're taking on the role of one of these characters to have the city succeed, but you of course as a politician want to be the one that's representing the success.
Yeah.
So
the actual mechanics of the game is that you have these grunts, and you are sending them out in order to either arrest, what are they called? Cult members, cultists, which I'll talk about in a second because that's actually part of the experience that made this unique for me. So you're either arresting cultists or you are doing the action at that location. And some of those actions are getting resources, some of them are making trades for different resources, and you're also having to do things outside of the building as well. So you might, or outside of the city rather. And so you might be sending your main worker outside of the city to do things like fight the cultists or like stop horrible things from happening, or to actively deploy and build the lighthouses. And so this is a semi-cooperative game. I will say that that is a generous semi.
Yeah. It's more like you have some aligned interests with certain parts, and that like you're both fighting against the cultists, but you're like, I'd rather you contribute your resources to the cultists, but if neither of us do, we're both going to be hurt. So it's like, do I want mutually assured destruction, or do I want to sacrifice a little bit? And so...
Yeah, I think... So first, I think we need to talk a little bit about how the cultist works. So the cultist is a mechanic that makes it so that you have to balance.
Yeah.
In higher player counts, you can actually go completely mad, kind of like Deep Regrets, and just align with the cultists.
Yeah, towards the end of the game, you can decide, screw it, I'm actually going to try and vie for like leadership of the cultists within the city. And so if the cultists win, meaning everyone else loses, I actually count as winning.
Yeah. And so I think at a higher player count that works out well. You can't do that in a 2-player. And so I did find that it was more irritating when you were making selfish decisions because there were things that would negatively impact all of us, and you kind of have to make a decision of, am I also going to make selfish decisions? And then we both lose. But what I really liked about this is that often in 2-player games, there's some sort of like AI or mechanic that works to balance things out. And I appreciated that that wasn't just I'm here to balance out a 2-player game mechanic. It was legitimately a part of the game that did make it cooperative.
It wasn't like trying to simulate a fake third player like some other games do. It was actually its own entity, which is quite fun.
The game has beautiful table presence. The other reason I think it ended up in my top 3 was because we don't have something like this in our collection, and I did end up thinking about it for quite a few days later. I don't know that it's something that I would pull out super often because it's an investment, but it for the level of strategy and depth that it had, I feel like I say this sentence a lot, like for the level of blah, but truly, this is a game that's going to take a couple of hours, maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours in order to play well. And I think that it is just a really legitimately cohesive thematic game. And I really enjoyed the storytelling behind it. I loved the asymmetric abilities. I liked that you were kind of balancing between what was available and also what your opponent could do in their own special little world.
Yeah, I mean, you just said, I just want to share some love with Incredible Dream. The world building that they do with their games and around the games, like I love the commitment to that. I just appreciate it so much. And like the only thing you haven't touched on that was really important to me is the asymmetry in this game is so delightful. We hadn't played Old King's Crown yet, and so at the time, this was like the best asymmetric experience I'd ever had. I think it's so well thought out. It didn't feel, at times it felt, it felt unfair, but holistically and like retrospectively, I think it was quite well balanced in that we had different things available to us at different times. I loved the asymmetric experience in this.
Yeah, I agree. So we are finally in our top 2 games each, and Ollie's number 2 is my number 8.
Yes, and that is no stranger to the channel, and that is Moon Colony Bloodbath.
I hate that you're tipping it. It will go everywhere.
I have to tip it so that they can see, but this game we have not got a custom insert for yet, and it goes everywhere when we tip it. So for the rest of this, I might actually lay it on its side. Just forgive me, please. And so in Moon Colony Bloodbath, you are building a colony on the moon. You're representing a scientist. And as you're building a colony, you're building a tableau of cards, each representing like a building or like an initiative, which has to have people manning it. And throughout the game, the central deck that is shared between all players is going to start introducing challenges to you where, like, unfortunately, there are going to be some malfunctions, robots are going to go haywire, there's going to be food shortages.
Hazards of the trade.
And so you're going to have to start allowing and picking who's going to die, and that will eventually cause you to have to close down some of your buildings, which represent your engine, which hence the engine destroying. And so this is a really creative use of competitive engine building. A lot of the times we've seen this in the past, it's often about like the efficiency, how much resource production you can do. But in this one, it's really just about sustaining and having enough risk preparation, how much risk you're willing to like invest in, and so like I really enjoy how it brings engine building and tableau building into like a competitive scene. Thematically, it is brilliant, so fun to play. I mean, this was still a high pick for you, so like
it's funny to hear you say all this, champ, because the first time we played this game, there were some cards dramatically thrown onto the table.
You're exaggerating slightly. We played this game. I had a horrible experience. We literally played this game again back to back, and it raised for me because I understood the game, I understood how it worked. It felt very unfair and frustrating the first time we played, and I was like, I don't like how much luck and randomness is in this game, and there is a bit of a randomness. You can completely... skill is not the only thing you need in this game. You do need a bit of luck, and that's frustrating to someone like me.
I think so. Earlier we were talking about how I learned a lot about myself with Zenith, and I really like having deep conversations regarding how board games can help us understand ourselves more deeply, not just help us connect with other people, which both and here. But one of the things that I really learned about Zenith for myself was around how difficult it is for me to play confronting or high conflict games with people, especially with people who I feel a little emotionally responsible for. And that's my own stuff. This game, I think, really highlights whether or not you're the type of person who gets angry when your agency is affected. Because this is a game where you cannot control the conditions of the environment, and the environment changes game to game. And so you might get lucky and you might have enough time to be able to execute a really good strategy and outlast, or the tide might turn early enough that not only did you not get lucky with what you drew, but also the environment is becoming increasingly hostile earlier and earlier in the game. And so I find that from what I've heard from different people, this game really helps me identify which types of players are high agency players, meaning that they really, really struggle when the environment of the game is making it hard for them to feel like they have agency.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a power dynamic thing, actually, that when it feels like the game has power over you, either through luck or through purposeful destruction, and there's a gradient flex of how much agency you can have. I noticed, and you can speak for yourself here, but I noticed that you've liked games when you've been able to execute more high agency moves before the power dynamics start coming crashing down on you.
Yeah, and so this game is really good at like making you think early on. Like every time we play this with people, they'd be like, "Oh, this is actually quite easy," or "Oh, I'm actually think I'm doing quite well here," or "Oh," that they think they're ahead because they've got more resources, because they're doing well. But you need to be cleverly using your resources. Your first time is probably going to be frustrating, or you're not going to do well. But as you learn the game, you know what kind of things you need to prepare for. You know what kind of things are worth investing in. And so you can really build up a solid foundation to survive some of those really frustrating events that can happen.
Yeah.
A lot of that agency comes from understanding the game well enough after your first play.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Awesome. So that was Moon Colony, which was my number 2 pick.
My number 8.
Yeah. Okay. So up next is my number 4 and Madeline's number 2.
Fea's Swamp. So the first time we ever played this game, we only played 2 rounds and we had to stop in the middle of the game. And I think it's a testament of how good the game is that we didn't really understand how to play it at first. It was a really clunky learn kind of game. We stopped halfway through and I was still thinking about playing it again pretty soon. We ended up then going to Manchester Board Game Festival. They had it in the raffle and we were really gunning for it. But the person who won the game was Levi, and we were able to get another copy so that we'd be able to teach it to her in her series where she's traveling around the country and different people are teaching her games.
So we played this partially at a 4, we played it at a 2, and we played it at a 3. And mechanically, this feels quite quite a unique game, so I think we need to take a beat to just explain how Fea's Swamp plays.
So Fea's Swamp is exactly what it sounds like. It is a swamp, a marshland, a wetland, so to speak, and you are doing tile placement, area control via the form of building islands over the course of the game. So you start with 2 ships, and every single turn you place one of your workers out into either a sail action, which affects your boat sailing around and doing things, or land actions, which are usually more point-oriented. There's a circular economy in this game, so you're selling fish to other players who are then choosing to celebrate on those islands, to eat those fish for victory points, to clear things off. And you're selling fish to gain money, but they're eating fish to gain points. And so the player interaction is incentivized to support and help each other. The other thing that's really fun about this is that you have a personal board of different tiles, and there are 4 different tracks. And so every time you do a build action, depending on how many boats you have, so again, you start with 2, you can build, as long as you can afford them, 2 islands at a time. Now you have to build from left to right, but you can bounce between these different tracks based on the different bonus effects that you want to link or open. So one of them orients more around being able to get more fish quickly. Another one gives you more boats. Another one gives you more meeples so that you can do more actions. Another one gives you more mana, which is a really valuable resource to be able to unlock extra spots after people have placed their workers in like the 3rd and 4th position.
And that was honestly one of my favorite things about this game. I liked a lot of the mechanics generally, but my favorite thing about it was like the upgrade track. I think the reason why I like asymmetry is that I love being able to capitalize on something that I have invested in or that I have available to me that my other player mates don't. And with upgrade tracks, it's like that, but even better, because I'm actively choosing what to invest in compared to other people at the table. And then I'm trying to leverage that. Like if I have more workers available, I know that I can quickly like rush certain objectives that maybe they can't get to as much. Or if I have more sales, I can complete more actions on one turn. So.
I think one of the experiences that I really like in this game that I do see in some other games as well is when you have a few different options and then the player interaction filters your options down. So like someone will place something somewhere and I'll have in my head, oh, okay, that makes that decision easier. Like I won't do that, I'll do that. Or okay, I'm going to do that regardless regardless up until this point. If it starts to cost more than that, I'm not going to do it anymore. And so the player interaction really affects the dynamism of your strategy. And I really like that also because it gives me something to do between turns. Because often I find if there's a game where the strategy is so obvious, you're just kind of waiting for someone else to execute their turn and then waiting for it to get back to you. In this case, I'm invested in what the other person is doing because of the high player interference. And so they might be selling to a tile that now means that I can't sell to that tile anymore. And one of the other really cool components of this is every single round you draft a guide, and that guide affects how much it costs for you to build things and also how far you can go in your boats. And so you're also balancing between like, do I want this turn to be about being able to travel a lot, or do I want this turn to be about low cost for being able to build things and expand?
So much agency in this game.
Yeah.
You get to choose your guides at the end of each round, but if you time when you end your turn, you could try and end early or end late so that you can pick one of the ones that the other players has. Because if Madeline's still playing out her turn, then I won't be able to pick hers. And so if I can try and delay my turn ending somehow, then I'll have the opportunity to pick the guide that she has.
Yeah, so Fea's Swamp was one that I wasn't really sure about because I'd heard mixed things. I heard that a lot of people loved it, but then I also heard this kind of like backcurrent of like, it's okay, it's a little overhyped. I think this is appropriately hyped. I also think, though, that it matters that everyone at the table is playing strategically. Because if someone is just like, la, 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 I guess I'll build there, I guess I'll put my meeple there, like, it does affect the game. Whereas if everyone is being really strategic, I think that other players' strategy not only interferes with what you can do, but actively, like, elevates the game. So Ollie's going to share his number one, and the reason this one didn't make it to my list is because I don't know how I feel about it yet.
So that means we've got to get a few more plays in it then, surely. Yeah.
I think I feel good about it.
So my number one pick is Old King's Crown. Now, I have been anticipating this game for so long, and it took a while to get to the table because of two things. One, it's a crunchy game to learn. It takes a bit of an investment to get through this thick rule book. And two, the combativeness of this. But as we spoke earlier with Zenith, we have been learning the kinds of player interactions that we like and the kind of combative nature that we like. And so we finally got Old King's Crown to the table this month. And honestly, it's the kind of game where like it definitely took a sit down of like a 45 minutes to an hour to like fully learn and understand. But it's one of those games where once you learn it, it's quite intuitive. And I would not say that it has that cost every time you play. It's just the upfront cost of learning.
A lot of the cognitive load is also held on the player board. So again, when the rule book is thick. But once you get through that bad boy in 3 to 5 business hours, you will then be able to could just move through the gameplay pretty swiftly.
So in Old King's Crown, honestly, if you've ever played Top Trumps, the core mechanic is a lot like that. You've got a hand of cards. They each have numbers on them. Some of them have special abilities depending on how you activate them. But you really are just playing a card to a location, and then you flip the cards over, and generally speaking, whoever has the highest number wins. Where the interesting mechanics come into play is the abilities on those cards, ways in which you can have like an ambush to have additional cards there, how you can leverage abilities you've earned throughout the game to like modify an effect or retreat out of there, or modify your opponent's abilities. I really love how it uses asymmetry to create dynamic combats that would otherwise feel like kind of simple and mundane. It really keeps the game super interesting. And I'm expecting that each player is going to feel quite different. We played at 2 players, and I'm told that it can feel a little bit laborious and like quite thinky and much more like stressful at higher player counts. But at 2, it felt quite chill. A lot of the stress for me came from like learning the game and like having to double check that we understood mechanics well. I love the asymmetry. I've been looking forward to playing again. We needed a slight break.
We need to play again.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to playing the other factions. I'm looking forward to playing the factions that Madeline played as.
Yeah. That was actually something that I thought was really cool about this game, is that in the rulebook they talk about the different factions, and of course they talk about the lore, but they also talk about how you might want to choose a different faction depending on what type of gameplay you like. And so it was interesting because Ollie said, I think I know which one you're going to pick based on how I know you as a player.
And that's right.
And he was right. So I played as the clans, and the clans' main mechanism them is mobility. So like you can just like move things around constantly.
Yeah.
And so there's, some of them are more about like firepower and like really just like absolutely like going after someone, ambush, 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 right? The clans are about mobility. So you're able to kind of just peace out in the middle of a fight and be like, never mind, I'm going to go like flank on this side. And that was really cool, especially because the main overview of this game is that there's like extra ability drafting. You're activating some of your passive abilities or like strategic abilities. Then the core meat of it happens in the center of the board where you're doing these clashes. So like those are where the trump cards are coming in.
Yeah.
But what happens is they're not necessarily done in the same order every time. So the person who has the lower VP when you start the game, or what is it, like the lower, gets to decide what order they're in after you've already laid the cards down. And so the advantage of being mobile is that depending on what my opponent decided to do in what order, if I played my cards right, pun intended, I could be like, sure, we can do it in that order. I'm just also going to completely change where everything is. And so I think that was a really cool effect. I think it was just for me why I don't know how I feel about it is because I was really sensory overloaded between watching content on it, then reading the rule book, then also learning the game. And so I think for Ollie, he did a lot of deep research and had really become familiar with the game and watched a couple of playthroughs and like had been really prepped. For someone who is absorbing the game, learning the game, understanding it from a top-down perspective, and then actively playing it, it was just a lot to take on. So even though I won, like it felt like my brain was like, I need to rest now.
It's the kind of game where like it definitely benefits from a human in the room to teach you.
Yes.
And then also
it would like cut the cognitive fatigue in half.
And then also kind of throwing away your first play and being like, okay, I've let the game now we can play it for real like another time, or even same day if you're spending all day
very
playing.
True. But it's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. That's the other thing we didn't talk about. Beautiful artwork. The cards are, I love them. I love how the player board like has different locations for the currently active step marker, so it's kind of walking you through the turn phase. I haven't seen many games that do that so thoroughly, so that you always know what you're doing now, what's coming next. Like, have we done that? We can move on. And so it's so clear about what's happening right now, which I imagine is even more important when you've got more people at the table. So love this. This is my top one pick of the month.
Okay, so now we're on to my top one pick, which surprised me as much as it might surprise you.
Yeah, so this is my top 3 pick, which also surprised me.
Which is Yonder.
Yeah.
So we picked this up at UKGE. We, without really even thinking about it, they were like, would you like the deluxe version? And we were like, yeah! Anytime Ollie hears the word metal coins, he's like, take my money!
Yeah, it was also just like really good value. Like between the base game and the deluxe upgrade,
it was like 15 quid.
Like it was like 15 quid, and the componentry and like the box inserts. It's so well designed.
I don't know what is missing in the base version, but what I will say is this game surprised me as being my top one because again, in the greater context of like games I love or even all the games in our collection, like do I think it would still sit within my top 10? I'm not sure. Probably at this moment, but that could change. I really loved this game. Like the component first I'll give an overview and then I'll talk about why. The overview is that this is pure worker placement and like resource management. So you have this like big central board, like massive central board, and you have these different workers and each individual worker has a different effect. So if you've played the game Emberheart, where you have different grunts and then you can upgrade those grunts into a different worker, similar vibe here. So elves are allowed to, they can occupy any space, but they can also occupy a space that's already occupied as long as it's not another elf. Gnomes get you a build discount or a resource discount on certain spaces. Ogres end up getting you double the resources, but then at the end, each of your workers needs to be fed, and that food that you don't use to feed them ends up going back into the supply aside from grain. And so you're thinking about like using the workers, but also feeding the workers. And so like ogres get you twice as much resource, but they also cost twice as much to feed. In addition to all of this, you're trying to take your raw resources, sometimes even your people, and fulfill these envoy orders from other areas, domains, ranges. So there were so many different elements to this, and I found that I just had so much fun playing this game, even though it was super late. We were learning the game late. The table presence is beautiful. The visual effect is gorgeous. Like even the little meeples, like the goblin looks like a goblin, and the skeleton looks like a skeleton. Like they're just, it's so freaking cute.
So I hope you'll forgive me, but like you said, like a day or two before we played this, like I'm not sure I like worker placement games.
Yeah, it's true.
Mostly because of like they're the kind of games where like you kind of have to have a lot of thinking, and so people often take slower on their turns, and I find that not as stimulating. We then, like, the next game we learnt was this, and now it's the top pick for that.
I love this game!
And so, like, yeah.
I know, it really turned the tide. I have more complex things to say about it, but this is what I wished Emberheart was. So I was really hopeful about Emberheart as a worker placement game, and there's a lot that I do think is great about that game. Some of the things that I struggled with in Emberheart, like the cohesiveness between like why you would be like there, it felt complicated, not complex. And this game feels complex, meaning that it made a lot of sense to me why I was trying to do things. And I always find the mark of a good game is when you're puzzling something out quite frequently of like, okay, if I do this, then I can do that, then I can do that, because I love action chaining. And there were just enough options for you that if someone ended up blocking something, you could be resourceful. Toward the end of the round, where the workers are mostly distributed, that gets harder and harder and harder to do.
And like it brought out some mean sides from you, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't know this game could be mean. And then Madeline did something and I was like, oh my God. And so Madeline spoke earlier about having to feed your workers. You can also use your opponent's like private buildings where they're generating resource. And so Madeline went and placed an ogre on one of my buildings. She had the same building that she had not used yet. However, by doing that, she both got double the resource.
And now you had to deal with feeding it.
And now I had to deal with feeding it. And more importantly, I couldn't use that again.
Yay!
At least not with an ogre. And so like I now have the burden of having to feed this ogre, which is like the most hungriest of the workers. And I don't get to use that food space because it was a meat one. And so, like, the game isn't that mean throughout.
No.
But there are opportunities for player interaction that negate an ability or something that your opponent has access to. And you can also, like, put on inconveniences on them. And so it's not, like, overtly mean, but it's, like, you can very much frustrate who you're playing with.
I'm going to expose my newbieisms, but, you know, when we were having a conversation with Levi the other day, we were talking about different terms in the board game space.
Oh, hate drafting.
And there's hate drafting, which is not, you know, that's just like, hate drafting is just taking something literally so your opponent can't have it.
Yeah.
But there's also denial. So like doing something to block someone's progress. And I think that's the level of meanness where the ceiling is. So like the worst thing that you can do to another player is not hate draft. I mean, you could technically hate draft an envoy, but you still have to fulfill it. So you would really screw yourself over if you did that. You can inconvenience the other player. And so I was still doing it as part of a strategy, but you're right. There are probably some ways I might have been able to solve it.
It didn't actually feel too mean because there was clearly a strategy behind it. What felt most frustrating to me is that you had your own building that you could have placed it on. You were placing it on mine, just like race me to it. So
whatever, man. Yonder, I'm very happy. Like, also, I think when you, without really knowing much about a game, make this impulsive decision to invest in something and it's not cheap, I think there's a desire for it to live up to the hype of what you felt at the time, and this exceeded my expectations.
So Madeline has been raving about this game on behalf of both of us. This was still my top 3 game. And so like I just want to say, like, we haven't spoken about this. I'm going to give this like the Board Brains like gold star of the month. Like board game of June or whatever. Like this was a lot of fun. Like this our combined like ranking of this game was definitely the highest.
I can't wait to play it at a higher player count as well.
Oh yeah, it's going to take a while. We're going to have to find people who are comfortable like learning rules and have like 2 or 3 hours to spare, including just chilling. And then this is going to be so fun at 4, I think.
Yep, and there's a solo mode.
Oh yes, solo mode. I don't know much about the solo mode though.
That was our top 10 games, even though it was definitely more than 10 games.
Yes, and so there are a few games here that we haven't done dedicated videos on yet. I'm thinking Thea's Swamp, Yonder, Kinfire Council, and so please do leave a comment below of which games you want us to do like a deeper comparison on. And
this content can get even more long form, let me tell you.
So we're like, especially as we start exploring alternate player counts and getting a few more reps steps in with some of these,
Yeah.
I'd love that.
The other thing is that we do this out of passion, and we really care about the board game industry. We really care about speaking about our experiences, and we really strongly believe that board games and play in general are a cornerstone of what is needed in this world. So if you really enjoy our content or just want to support us, one of the best things you can do is leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. It really makes a huge difference, both for like morale and also it helps us to understand what you're interested in as well.
Yeah, awesome. So anything else you want to end on, Madeline? Like, I was about to ask you, so all of these games here, which is your favorite? But that's kind of the point of the video.
We really just did that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking about is how annoying it is to put these back in order for our short form.
Oh, yeah. Well, wish us luck with that, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.